Donald Trump's astrology is nothing short of fascinating. Born under a blood moon, a total lunar eclipse, his chart tells the story of a man shaped by shadow and light. A polarizing figure whose very existence seems to mirror the intense contradictions of our times. From his regal Leo Ascendant to the volatile Mars-Pluto combination in his first house, Trump embodies power, transformation, and controversy. But what does his cosmic blueprint reveal about his deeper destiny and his role in shaping the collective narrative of modern America? In this video, we'll explore the astrological archetypes at play in Trump's chart and how they help us understand his extraordinary rise, his enduring influence, and what might lie ahead. So let's dive into the astrology of Donald Trump: shadow, power, and destiny. You asked for it, you got it. The astrology of Donald Trump: shadow, power, and destiny. Welcome into the lab, everyone. I'm Daljit, your host. This is Astrolab 21, the astrology laboratory for the 21st century. And boy, does it feel like we are in the 21st century now, doesn't it? We are definitely in a new era. And this year is going to prove to be quite pivotal, I think, in our lives, in the world, and in the astrology. So this video is actually a follow-up to the last video I did, which was on the astrology of the 2025 presidential inauguration. Last week, on January 20th, Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States and has officially begun his second term in office. And so we did a look at the mundane astrology. We looked at the chart for that moment of the inauguration at noon on January 20th in Washington, D.C. And it quickly, actually almost overnight, became the most viewed video on the history of this channel, which is now going on almost 5 years. So no surprise, it's quite an interesting topic. I think a lot of people's attentions are on this presidency, this inauguration, what's going to happen across the political spectrum. So I'm not surprised at the interest. But yeah, a lot of views. I got more comments than I usually get views on most of my videos. So that was it was heartening. And I appreciate everyone who did watch, who liked the video and commented. Of course, please like and subscribe to this one if you are watching because of that last one and you didn't subscribe last time. But I was really pleased with the response across the spectrum. And I will say some people did accuse me of having a political bias. Of course, I am human, so I do have my biases. But just for the record, I will state that I've been a registered independent as long as I've been old enough to vote. I voted in the first election in 1988 when I turned 18. So this is actually my 10th election cycle. And yeah, I'm not a registered Democrat. I am not a Republican. I don't consider myself a liberal or a conservative. I am fairly independent. I consider myself a very cynical and critical citizen. That's kind of my political stance. And if you watched my video on the election that I did in November, you'll see that I was pretty critical of both sides. And I am a critic of what I consider the American duopoly. I think we have two parties that are pretty much bought and paid for by the moneyed interests. And so no matter which side wins, they seem to get what they want. And we just deal with the consequences, the rest of us. And so anyway, there's a little caveat on my political stance. But, I appreciate the comments. And, during that video, I did ask, the audience, if you'd like to see the chart of Donald Trump or the chart of Elon Musk or the chart of how they might interact, because we talked a lot about that relationship in that video. The answer was a resounding yes. A lot of you wanted to see videos on these men, their charts, and sort of get a look at a deeper understanding of the characters, the personalities. Who are these people? What makes them tick? And that's one of the things that astrology is quite useful for. It's something I love to do. So, I've spent the last week preparing for this video, and this will be the first in a series of 3. We'll do this one on Trump, We'll do one on Musk, on his birth chart, and then we'll do what we call a synastry, which is how do those two charts interact? What does the astrology tell us about how they might work together during this administration? So, as I usually do, what I do is I look at the charts and I take my notes on what I see. Then I usually will organize those notes and work it up into a blog post, right? And I'll share that. I used to write for Medium. I've since switched to Substack, which I'm really liking. So hopefully you can join me over there. A lot of you did from the previous video, but I'll put a link in the description below to my Substack where I have that, and I'll just share this with you. I've worked on these 3 articles have already been written, so I've done all my research. So there's the article on the video that we're going to do now on Trump, shadow, power, and destiny. I've got one on Elon Musk, savior or sovereign. It was an interesting exploration of his chart. And then this morning, I released the one on their synastry, which is, I'm calling American Plutocracy, the astrology of Trump and Musk. So this is kind of a new home for all of my content. I've been writing on Medium for years, but finally some colleagues convinced me to come over to Substack, and they were right. It is a great platform as far as I can tell. I like the way it looks. It's a place where I can host my writing as well as videos, and I'm going to be doing some blogs, some podcasts. I will probably start doing some Q&As here and AMAs, some premium things. It's free to subscribe. I don't have any of this behind a paywall right now, but so you can join for free. You just have to sign up for the newsletter. But of course, many of you actually did sign up from that video and actually became paid subscribers, for which I wanted to say thank you. I am incredibly grateful for that. It sort of, I don't want to say it renewed my faith in humanity, because I've never lost my faith in humanity, right? I'm a Sag rising. I'm indefatigably hopeful about humanity, but it reinforced my faith in humanity, let's say. So again, thank you for those who signed up and became paid subscribers. I'm trying to build a community over there, so I'm hoping to see many of you over there join me. I think it would be nice. But anyway, if you want to read the articles before the videos, they're there for you. But if you prefer to wait for the videos, well, here we go. So we're going to dive into this one. This one is going to be a look at Trump's personal chart, right? So last time we looked at the inauguration, which was about the time of the inauguration. It was what does this time tell us about what these next 4 years might be? It was the tone of the administration itself, not the man, but the entity. So now we'll take a look at, well, what is Trump's chart? What makes this guy tick? And this will give us a better understanding of him, what his motivations are, what his character is, why he's become such a popular figure, for good or for ill, right? He's undeniably captured the imagination of this nation and really of the entire world at this point. So a fascinating character to look at, and I think you're going to enjoy this process. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at the astrology of Donald Trump, shadow, power, and destiny. And I chose these 3 words carefully because what you'll see, what we're going to discover here is those 3 qualities are predominant in the chart of Trump. We're going to see the shadow, the power, and the destiny. And we're going to look at each of those 3 sort of qualities. And I think it'll give you an understanding of how this guy is composed. What is he made of? And why he is the way he is. And again, this is something I always like about astrology. We're getting to understand the humanity. Like, I'm not trying to deify this person. I don't want to demonize this person. I want to humanize this person. That's what astrology does. And so hopefully you'll appreciate that and that effort. And hopefully you'll understand how and why he does the things he does. So if we want to look at the chart here, we've got June 14th, 1946, 10:46 a.m., New York, New York. And here is the birth chart of Donald Trump. And the first thing I usually do is we'll take kind of a bird's eye look at the chart, and you can just kind of get a sense of things once you start to learn how to read these things. Of course, we always want to look at the sun, right, and the moon and the rising. We call these the big 3 in astrology, and they kind of form the backbone of every chart. So when you can look at, how is the sun and moon interacting and relating in relationship to the ascendant, What are the rulers of those places and planets? It really is the fundamental backbone. We express ourselves very much through our sun, our moon, and our rising. You look at major aspects, we see that he's got Jupiter and Chiron down here, and this harmonious aspect with both the sun and the moon, which are in opposition. But this is really what is the most salient feature of this chart. And any astrologers who looked at this chart will tell you this is the power axis of the Trump horoscope. Why is that? Because if you see here, the sun and the moon are in exact opposition, which tells us Trump was born under a full moon, on the day of a full moon. What's more, you see that the moon is conjunct the south node and the sun is conjunct the north node here. What that tells us is that Trump was born during an eclipse. Trump is an eclipse soul. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's what we're going to take a deeper look at, because really that gets to the heart of this chart, this blueprint of this soul, of its desire to evolve in this lifetime. Really the core of what we're getting at. So when we get an eclipse in a chart, it's something to really focus on. So we'll dive into that, and we'll come in here and get a close-up of the chart, and we'll see, right? We've got the sun at 22 Gemini. We've got the nodes at 20 degrees Gemini. It's also conjunct Uranus, which we're going to look at as well. But this was a total lunar eclipse that ironically was visible just about everywhere in the world except for the United States. I think only Hawaii was able to see it on that day. As you can see here, he's born at 10:46 in the morning, so that eclipse would have happened during the day when the moon was over here on the other side of the Earth. Right? It wasn't visible in the United States at the moment of Trump's birth. But nonetheless, the imprint on this young soul, on this newborn soul, was to be born during an eclipse. And it wasn't just any kind of eclipse. It was a full lunar eclipse, but it was also what we call a blood moon. So what does it mean to be born under a blood moon? I mean, we've heard of born under a bad moon, right? But the blood moon. Well, this is actually just an optical effect, right? On a lunar eclipse, it's actually the Earth that is blocking out the light of the sun, right? Because the Earth is between the sun and the moon during a lunar eclipse, during a full moon. So the light of the sun is bending around the Earth, and that light goes through the Earth's atmosphere, which creates all these sort of optical effects and creates this red glow to the moon. So that's why we call these a blood moon. So very dramatic sounding, and it is very dramatic. Like the energy of an eclipse is, these are two of the most intense times of any calendar year, the two eclipse seasons. So it's not surprising that Trump has this incredibly powerful quality to his horoscope, right? So let's look at what it means here just to be born under this blood moon or a full lunar eclipse. What it does is it reflects, obviously the moon reflecting the light of the sun, it reflects a dualistic and polarizing personality, right? No surprise there. A word that we hear a lot about Trump. He's a very polarizing figure. And this is what a full moon does. It polarizes. It's just the natural energy between these two luminaries at the time of his birth. It highlights his ability to captivate and divide public opinion. Part of that is we're going to look at this sun is in the 11th house of a very public house, a very social house. We're going to look into this. This is why Trump is the Twitter president, the social media president, the TV president. He just has an incredible resonance with being in public, being in the spotlight. Also, it suggests a destiny. We talk about this word, right? The destiny, which is tied to public visibility and conflict, right? So the destiny, as we'll learn, is associated with his north node. Wherever the north node is in any chart, your chart, my chart, Trump's chart, it's pointing us to our sort of evolutionary direction in this lifetime. It really is their destiny. We want to follow that north node. For Trump, having his sun conjunct the north node on a full moon, on an eclipse, means that this guy has a special sense of destiny. He feels destined to be a leader, the sun, as we'll see. And so it's not surprising that this guy has defied all odds to become president of the United States not once, but twice. But this destiny is tied to public visibility, again, 11th house, and conflict. The conflict comes from this opposition between the sun and the moon. This creates tension, right? So there's an internal tension inside of this man by nature of the characteristics of this aspect. So I want to actually pull a quote from the article that I did write for that Substack blog post, because it really speaks directly to the quality of being born under an eclipse. So I'm going to just highlight, I want to read this paragraph to you, and I think it's really enlightening. So as I wrote, to be born during a total lunar eclipse is no ordinary cosmic marker. It's a birth into shadow and light, into polarity itself. Trump's Gemini sun opposes his Sagittarius moon, framing his life as a perpetual balancing act between intellect and belief. Right? And why do I say that? Sun in Gemini is his intellect. Moon in Sagittarius is his belief. He is constantly torn between what do I think and what do I believe? And this is a contrast between adaptability and conviction. Right? Gemini is known for being very versatile, very adaptable. Sagittarius holds its philosophical convictions, religious convictions, very solidly. But here's the crux. Eclipses are moments of revelation and concealment. Eclipses both reveal and conceal. It represents a symbolic turning point when what is hidden emerges and what is visible falls into shadow. For those born under such an event, life unfolds in dramatic, often public cycles of rise, fall, and reinvention. Now, does that description not fit Trump to a T? If we look at his whole career, his career in politics, his career always in the public, right? If you grew up in the East like I did during the 80s and 90s, Trump was everywhere, right? He was on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. He was on talk shows. He was on page 6 of the Post with his high-profile marriages and divorces and scandals and real estate deals. This guy has risen, fallen, and reinvented himself multiple times. Real estate, his comeback with his TV show, with The Apprentice, the unexpected victory in 2016, and now this win in 2024. This guy exemplifies this light and shadow quality, this eclipsed moon in his chart. This is the core of this man's being, of his personality, of his characteristics, of how he sees the world. So I think it's really helpful to have this. It's very illuminating. I mean, it's almost, as I always say with astrology, you can't write this shit, right? It is so sometimes on the nose, as we say. So right away, looking at this most salient feature of his chart, we're getting a glimpse into really the core of his personality, this balancing act. What do I think? What do I believe? Am I adapting to the current situation, or am I holding true to my convictions? So we're born under a blood moon, right? Dualistic and polarizing. And now you can see it's the qualities of this opposition between the two lights of the chart, the sun and the moon. So let's look at the qualities of those things and see if we can learn a little bit more about how Trump is constructed, if you will. So of course the sun in all of our charts, wherever it is, it represents our individuality, our self-expression. It is our identity, our vitality, our authority. It's a very active and dynamic function in the chart. It represents the father, the masculine, the heroic, right? The leader. This is why sun sign astrology is so potent. You can look at just your sun in Gemini and you know a lot about yourself. If you've ever read the Sunday astrology column or the weekly, you understand, and as a fellow sun in Gemini, I've always related and resonated with these qualities. So here we have this sun, this purpose, this identity, and it's a function. All the planets have a function. So the function of the sun is to express the self, the core of who we are. What is our purpose? What is the purpose of this lifetime? It's always going to be encoded in the function of the sun. But then what happens is, I like to say that the the planets actually wear the signs. So the quality of the sign that a planet is in is going to tell you how does it express. So a sun in Gemini expresses its purpose, its creativity, its individuality, its self-expression through the archetype of Gemini. And what do we get with Gemini, right? We get a thinker. We get someone who's ruled by Mercury. It's all about talk, right? And talk is cheap, right? It can be very opinionated, two-faced, and scattered at times, right? And you think about whenever we see Trump go off script when he's just giving a press conference to the media and he just kind of just rambles for 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, that's that Gemini sun, right? It's not really focused. It's all over the place. You never know what you're getting with this guy. Gemini sun, classic Gemini sun. So this is a really strong part of his personality. His identity is tied to being a communicator, someone who uses the media, uses that spotlight, uses the pulpit to express himself. He has a lot to say, whether it's through press conferences, whether it's through tweets, whether it's through a television show, a talk show. The guy will come on, he's always going to talk. Gemini sun in the 11th house, right? So this, I feel like, dominates the personality, because on the other side, we've got this moon. The moon is, in many ways, the polar opposite of the sun. The sun projects, the moon reflects. The sun is masculine, the moon is feminine. The sun represents the father, the moon is the mother. The sun is gold, the moon is silver. So all of these qualities we all have as well. It represents in all of us our emotional center, our needs, our security needs. What do we need to feel safe and secure? We build our ego structure around the qualities of our moon. So Trump has his moon wearing the sign of Sagittarius. This is the most philosophical of all the signs. It's enthusiastic, it's optimistic, right? It's ruled by Jupiter, the great benefic. It can be very jovial. This is where he gets his ideals. This is where he gets his convictions. This is what makes him fanatical at times, right? It can be gullible, right? It can be over the top. And one thing that I think becomes obvious to me when you think about an eclipse, right, especially a lunar eclipse, it's the moon that is being eclipsed. It's being overshadowed. So oftentimes you'll see someone who has an eclipse in their birth chart, one or the two lights will dominate. And I think it's very clear in Trump's case that his sun is completely dominating over his moon. The moon is in the shadows and is in the service of the sun, which is really strong in the chart. It's placed at the top of the chart in the 11th house. It's in a day chart. This is a very strong sun, I would say, where this moon, it's not in a weak position, right? It's in the 5th house. It's in his house of creativity. But I think because it is eclipsed and it is as occluded, as you would say, it's the weaker of the two lights. And I think it serves as the back seat. And it's not surprising. And this and a few other features in his chart tell us why I think Trump has difficulty expressing his own inner feminine, right? His anima. He's not connected to the feminine and to the emotional. He's disconnected. It's in his shadow. He would rather project the masculine, the authoritarian, the powerful figure that the sun represents. So it's an interesting thing to observe in his character, and it's in his astrology. So we would expect that this moon sort of stays hidden. Of course, it's actually literally hiding behind him in this graphic, which I find amusing, right? It is. It's occluded. It's hidden. It's eclipsed. And this is where he wants us to look. He wants us to look to his sun, right? This is his identity. He identifies as this ruler, as this leader who is a great communicator, who has something to express, who has a destiny to fulfill, and who is an innovator, who is a disruptor, who is a rebel. As we're going to talk about with this Uranus placement, this adds a degree of uncertainty and unpredictability to this character. But this is how Trump identifies. Wherever your sun is where your core identity is. So he identifies with this Gemini 11th house destiny that he has to fulfill. So in contrast, I feel like this moon in Sagittarius is less obvious in his chart. It serves the sun. And this is often the case. The moon will be subservient to a sun. And this is also going to be connected deeply to his past, right? Wherever the south node is, points to the past, the opposite of the north node, which points to the future or our destiny. So we can learn a lot about Trump's past life with this connection to the moon. Very possible that he was very lunar in a past life, very much more connected to the feminine. And in this life, he is switching polarities, if you will. He's doubling down on his masculine image. But of course, it's there. But it's hidden, and it could be secret. This probably speaks to his relationship dynamic between his mother and his father. And if you've watched any of the biographies on Trump, his mother was always sort of in the shadows, in the background. Trump was always trying to impress his father, the sun, and be successful and be the inheritor of the family business, the real estate business. And Trump even sort of surpassed his older brother, who was sort of next in line to succeed his father and take over the business. Trump famously sort of became the heir apparent. And I'm sure if we looked at his brother's chart, it would not be as strong as this one. This is a very strong chart. Anyone who looks at this is going to point that out. But then you throw Uranus into the mix here, and man, do you have a wild card. Uranus is the wild card. Uranus is the maverick. This is where Trump's image as the outsider, the maverick, the rebel, the revolutionary, the disruptor, all comes from this Uranus conjunct this sun and north node. So let's take a look at what is this triple conjunction here telling us about Trump's persona, Trump's identity. This suggests a role where he is a prominent figure within networks. And of course, where did he famously make one of his most famous comebacks? You know, he was on network television with The Apprentice. He's going to be connected with collective movements. The whole MAGA movement, Trumpism, is a collective movement. And this gives him the ability to shape public discourse in transformative ways. And of course, he's certainly done all of those things. He really is using this 11th house powerhouse quite effectively. What else can we expect from this conjunction? Well, it's going to emphasize his destiny, right? The destiny is the north node, to be a central figure, right? That sun wants to be the center of attention in collective dynamics, which is the 11th house. And his methods will provoke division as much as unity. And this divisiveness comes from the fact of the full moon opposition eclipse energy. Then you bring the Uranian influence. What's this going to do? It's going to amplify his unconventional approach to leadership, right? And make him even more of a polarizing but innovative force, right? This is all the function of Uranus, all within social and political arenas. Again, 11th house. So this is how we begin to build our understanding of the personality, the character, the characteristics based on the horoscope, the chart. It's all there, and this is how you would interpret it. And we can see all of these qualities perfectly illustrated in Trump's character. He is just living out this, right? This is his, as I said, this is his north node. This is his destiny. You have a sense of a special destiny to fulfill. This is true of most people who are born under a full moon. There's a sense of fullness. There's a sense of great capacity with people who have full moon charts. Add to that an eclipse and a blood moon at that, and obviously the intensity gets ratcheted up. Throw Uranus into the mix, and this is like rocket fuel for this personality, for this sense of destiny, right? I have a special destiny to fulfill. I'm here for a very special purpose. And we'll see with his rising sign, that gets amplified and cranked up to 11, as we'll move and look at next. So this is really the focus point. And again, if we look at that sun, the expression of authority, of purpose. What am I here to do? I'm here to be a leader, a dynamic, active, masculine, heroic reformer. And then you combine that with the energy of Uranus. Well, I'm going to do it in a revolutionary way. I'm going to be the outsider. I'm going to be the maverick. I'm going to be rebellious and inventive. I'm going to use the future technologies to reform. I will be eccentric as hell. I may be a little antisocial. I'm going to be incredibly unpredictable, a radical nonconformist, and there will likely be upheaval and chaos. This is a guy who thrives on chaos, thrives on it. He is extreme. He could be deviant, right? Sudden change, a very rebellious person. There's this sort of Promethean quality to him. And, of course, Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. And we talked about Pluto in Aquarius in the inauguration chart. This is why he resonates so powerfully with these times. And this is why, in hindsight, I thought, you look at that inauguration chart, and it almost had to be Trump, right? He was the right guy for the times, for good or for ill, right? Love him or loathe him, there's a reason this happened, and it's happening. This guy, this is his destiny to fulfill at this time. You know, whether he does good or bad, that's not for us to decide, right? We're just seeing why, and why he feels empowered, and what has driven him and guided him to this point in his political career. So, a very Uranian character, to say the least. And it shows up in his personality, it shows up in his political style, it shows up in everything he does. This Uranus is just fused with his sun. They are inseparable. And they're both expressing through Gemini. Again, this Gemini emphasis of this guy who loves to express himself. And he's intelligent, don't underestimate this guy's intelligence. He is crafty, he is cunning, he is clever, right? We think of all of these characteristics. He can be duplicitous, right? He can be fickle, right? He can have one hot button issue and then a week or a month later he's over it, right? Incredibly opinionated. This guy is not afraid to share his opinions. This is the true north of this chart, and this is why I say destiny. This is his sense of destiny. I am destined, North Node, to be a eccentric, revolutionary, rebellious, maverick leader who has a voice in the public. Destiny. All right. So where do the other pieces come from? Well, now we need to look at the second place that is quite powerful in this chart, is Trump's first house. If we look here, we see he has Mars in a close conjunction with this Leo Ascendant, and we also have Pluto and Leo in the first house, a generational signature. And again, we talk about these Plutonian themes. This guy is a very Plutonian character, as we're going to see. So let's look at what this Leo Ascendant with Mars and Pluto together in the first house is going to give us. What we can expect is he will project an image, and this is what the first house is. It's our image, sort of the mask that we wear. It's our persona. So what is a Leo Ascendant going to do? It's going to project an image of dominance, of charisma, and of unrelenting self-assertion. That comes from the Pluto. Pluto is unrelenting in self-assertion, first house, and it wants to dominate. Mars wants to dominate, right? This Mars in Leo, this fuels his aggressive, bold, and theatrical approach to life and leadership, right? This guy loves being on stage, these massive rallies. Pluto, Leo, rising. As I said, the spotlight cannot shine bright enough on this guy. He's never met a camera he didn't like, a stage he didn't like, a microphone he didn't like. It's all about him, right? This is his identity. This is his persona. This is his mask. And then you get Pluto in here. What does this do? This adds this layer of intensity and power struggles. This is something Pluto is known for, but it reflects his larger-than-life persona. This is a symbol of a generation. He is the perfect example of the Pluto in Leo generation, which is predominantly the baby boomers, right? From 1938 to about 58 is really the Leo generation, which is mostly baby boomers. When you think about that generation, they're very creative, they're very expressive, they're all about leadership, and they're very performative, right? The music and the film and the politics, right? We've had every president since Clinton has been Pluto in Leo, except Barack Obama. He was the first Pluto in Virgo president, which was the sign of passing the torch to the new generation. And then we went backwards with Trump and backwards with Biden, and now we're backwards again. It's another one of my pet peeves. I feel like it's time to replace these Pluto and Leo leaders. It's time for some new leadership. And we'll talk about that when we talk about Musk, because Musk is a Pluto and Virgo generation. And one of the things that's an interesting dynamic between those two men, will they be able to resolve some of those? There's some generational tension between their two Plutos and their two powers and their two objectives in the world, which we'll see in the next couple videos. So a little preview of what's to come there. But back to Trump. He is Pluto in Leo. He wears it on his sleeve. It's undeniable. This is the projection of power, of aggressive force. When you've got Mars sitting on your ascendant in Leo, you are a fiery, fierce, combative warrior's mentality. You are a fighter, right? And this is, again, when we saw that image of him after the assassination, right? Fight, fight. I mean, that's Pluto and Mars in Leo on the first house. This is what people resonate with. This is a very attractive, magnetic rising, right? There's a sexual dynamic to this, as we'll see. When we talk about Pluto and we talk about Mars, there's this undercurrent of libidinal sex drive to this character. And let's take a look at that, because I think it's really interesting. So we think about Mars, right? It's aggressive, right? It's very masculine. It's assertive, competitive, very physical, can be rude, it can be selfish, it can be violent. But we see this libido and this lust. There's a sexuality, sexual desire. We all have a Mars. We all have it. It shows us our sexuality. For Trump, it's built into his personality, and it's aggressive. And so, again, not a surprise that this is a guy who's had, sexual allegations of sexual misconduct, sexual harassment. There's something that he feels is his to take, right? He's powerful. He should be respected. He should be admired. I'm not justifying this in any way. I'm merely saying this is where those qualities and characteristics come from. You can just see it plain as day. You'll see this with any character who has this kind of placement. Trump just happens to be someone we get to know and see very publicly. So we've got Mars, but then you add Pluto. And this just, again, this cranks the intensity up to 11. So not only do you have aggressive violence, you have this power lust. And it's also very violent. These are the two most aggressive and violent of all the planets. So to have them together in the sign of power is really incredible. But again, there's a lot of qualities we could look at here that Trump tends to exemplify. The idea of things like political upheaval. This is a very political planet, by the way. So again, not surprising that Trump entered the political arena with this configuration. It can be very extreme. I pointed this out in the other video, criminal and underworld. There's some really intense energy to this Pluto. Things like dynamic, right? Sex, right? Again, this power, this magnetism, this allure. This guy exudes some sort of sexual power. And I think it's part of his attraction. I think a lot of his followers, the MAGA supporters, the Trumpers, the people at the rallies, there's something they love about this guy because they can project their power onto him. They may feel weak, but he's saying, I am powerful, I will stand up for you, and I will fight for you. I will fight for you. Mars, Pluto, Leo Ascendant. You know, the guy's a fighter, as I always say, for better or for ill. But this is what we get, right? And then both of those are expressing through Leo, which just is the most willful, expressive, powerful of all 12 zodiac signs. Maybe Scorpio's more powerful, but I think Leo is far more expressive. And there's some characteristics of Leo that are just undeniably Trump-like. There's this sense of regalness, like, you know, he likes to think of himself as a king, right? He's very proud. Trust is a big thing for him, right? But he can be incredibly patronizing. He can also be sincere. Again, opinionated. We've seen this in other characters as well. Bossy, right? And this is the guy who became famous for firing people as the boss. You're fired. He's just obsessed with leadership. You know, he can be childlike. He can be selfish. He can be authoritarian. He can be naive. He's definitely loud and brash. He's certainly entertaining. You know, say what you will about him. He's the most entertaining president we've probably had in the modern era. Domineering, dignified, a show-off. He's, you know, pompous and bombastic. Like, you know, these are incredible characteristics. And it's just, this is what you get with a Leo rising. And then you run Pluto and Mars through that filter. And what do you expect, right? You get Trump. You get a guy like Trump. So if this Gemini 11th house is his destiny, well, we can say that this Leo rising with the two power planets, this is his power. So we've got destiny and power. Where's the shadow? Well, the shadow is sitting in between these two placements, which is really quite fascinating in this chart. And all the energy, most of it is here, these three houses. So the 12th house is the house of the shadow. And he's got his Venus closely conjoined Saturn and Mercury in Cancer in the 12th house. So now let's take a look behind the curtain. What's in the shadows that is fueling, in many ways, this power and this destiny? Now, there's a few more features to this chart that I will go into, but I think I'm going to save that for the extended version, which I will post on Substack as a sort of some bonus content and give you a reason. If you really want to see the rest of it, come join me over there at Substack. As I said, it's free to join and to subscribe, and I'll post the extended version of this video. So I'm going to snip this next section out, and we'll jump to the conclusion. At the end of the day, he's a human being, and he has a soul who is trying to evolve just like the rest of us. He's living out his own personal karma, and I just, you know, get the sense that he is trying to fulfill this sense of destiny, right? Which is pointing to this Gemini North Node, Sun-Uranus. I'm destined to be the maverick leader who brings incredible change and transformation to the country. And I'm going to do it in a big way. That's the chart of Donald J. Trump. It's all there. And most of it is up here in this three houses of shadow, power, and destiny. So there you have it. Shadow, power, destiny. The astrology of Donald Trump. Pretty fascinating, right? Isn't it amazing how we can use this tool of astrology to really understand how does this human function? What makes this person tick? Why are they the way they are, right? We can see he's using a lot of his characteristics, his skill sets, his assets. They're on display. He sort of can't help being that way. Of course, if we were his astrological advisors, we would be able to help him maybe with some of these shadow qualities and some of these 12th house issues, that Chiron wound, right, and that eclipsed moon, so that he could integrate better. He hasn't called me for a consultation, so I don't expect that anytime soon. But anyway, I feel like this is why I love astrology. It allows me to really understand the humanity. Right? Again, I'm not glorifying or idolizing him. I'm not demonizing him. I'm just saying this is why he is the way he is. This is how he is constructed. So I hope you enjoyed that. One other thing I will add, I've seen people speculating about his health. We didn't talk about his health. He doesn't have a lot of issues in terms of sixth house placements or anything really difficult health-wise. I would say I would not expect him to pass before his Uranian return, which happens at age 84. This guy is such a Uranian character. I fully expect him to live and see his full Uranian cycle, which would be, what, 2030? So he's got at least like 6 more years, 5 more years. So I don't think he will die in office. Whether he will finish out his term is a different story, but yeah, it won't be health related anyway, in terms of whether or not he would not be able to live through this term. Of course, having an assassination attempt made on his life, and of course that's the other thing we can do, like that comes up in the transit chart, and if I were to bring that up, it's a whole nother ball of wax, but that was that Mars conjunction in his 10th house. It was on his midheaven, which was yeah, it was a pretty significant transit. And so another tool, another way we use this tool, but another story for another day, perhaps another video we will do. And actually that is my intention. After we do Musk's chart and the synastry chart, we then can look at transits and see, okay, well then how do these, so we'll get a sense of who are these two men, how are they going to interact, how do they relate? And then finally you go, okay, well, what does the transit say? What does the current energy constellate for them in terms of how they will navigate the next, the next 4 years, or at least in the short term. So I've started looking at that too. It'll take me a while to create a presentation on it, but something that you can look forward to. And again, if that's something you want to see, please give me the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, get the notifications, and leave me a comment below. Let me know, what did you think of this video? Did you learn something? Do you have a different opinion of Trump than you had going into the video? Is there other things you'd like to explore, like me to do on this channel? I'm kind of open to it, so I do appreciate the comments that are sincere. And so yeah, I hope you got something out of that. I hope to see you on the next one. As fascinating as Trump is, I think Musk is equally as fascinating in many ways, and the energy between the two of them is really, really something to really dig into. So we'll do that next time. Until then, Sat Nam, everyone.